In the spring of 2022, a respected physician vanished from a major hospital during a routine night shift. 9 months later, a jammed sewer pump unearthed his bent stethoscope and a jawbone cut with surgical precision. But when investigators retraced his final steps, they uncovered a medical conspiracy no one was ever meant to survive. Year 2022. Dr. Ishan Patel vanished. 9 months later, a sewer pump beneath St. Cedric's Memorial Hospital jammed during routine maintenance. By dusk, the blockage forced a halt to half the building's lift systems and the ICU waistline. A city utilities team responded. Technician Martin Zhao descended into the narrow pump station expecting wads of gauze or surgical wipes. Instead, he pulled out a mangled stainless steel stethoscope with an engraved tag, Dr. I. Patel. Inside the same filter basket, Zhao saw something else, small, curved, pale. He reached for it with pliers. What emerged was a human jawbone, stripped to the bone, clean except for a faint streak of pink. And there were cuts, not from erosion or decay, but from something mechanical, deliberate. Detectives Elise Guerrero and Anton Wyatt were called before midnight. By morning, the area was cordoned off. Guerrero crouched beside the evidence tray, gloves on, her breath catching as the forensics team lifted the jaw to show its underside. Straight-edge trauma, no chipping, no chewing, said the tech, tapping the exposed ridge. Someone cut this, not nature. Patel had gone missing in April, mid-shift. 39 years old, general internist, smart, precise. Born in Houston, trained at Stanford, returned to serve in the very system that raised him. The last logged activity under his hospital badge was a page to internal security. Discrepancy in narc inventory, urgent. That message went out at 3:42 a.m. By 4, he was off the map. Detective Guerrero turned to her partner. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "No one steals fentanyl and waits to get caught," Wyatt muttered. If he paid security, somebody needed him quiet. They started with the chute. Surveillance footage from April 17th was pulled from the hospital's archive servers. Much of it was grainy. Some files, especially from East Wing, had record gaps, a frustrating but not unheard of issue in older systems. But there was one clear clip, 3:46 a.m., 2 minutes after Patel's page. An orderly, Vincent Canley, per staff ID, pushes a gurney down corridor C3 toward the laundry chute alcove. The gurney was fully covered in a blue sheet, its sides unusually high. He walks fast, doesn't pause, and pushes the whole thing out of frame. There's no sign of Patel leaving the building. That clip becomes the fulcrum. Guerrero leans forward, studying frame by frame. Pause, zoom on the wheels. The tech does. No shadow beneath the center, she notes. Heavy load, weighted center. That's not linens. Next, inventory. Forensics logs show a single stethoscope reported missing that week, a custom Littman Master Cardiology. Stainless, Patel's standard tool. The tag confirms the ID. More chilling, the instrument's tubing shows slight scoring and deep bends, not just dropped or stepped on, compressed, possibly folded in a chute or crushed under weight. A secondary sweep of the waste path behind the pump reveals fragments of fabric, surgical green, likely from scrubs, and a shredded hospital badge, Patel's photo still partially visible, warped by moisture and friction. Detective Wyatt rubs his jaw. He didn't fall, he was thrown. Still, questions mount. If Patel had caught someone stealing drugs, why not let security handle it? Why act alone? And why did a surgical orderly, a man with no access to narcotics, move a covered gurney moments later? Back in the pathology lab, the jawbone goes under UV. A fine residue glows blue. Benzonox, says the tech, numbing gel, not OTC. This batch's molecular imprint matches our OR supply. Detective Guerrero stares at the glowing particles. "He was sedated," she whispers. The forensic pathologist confirms it by dawn. Traces of benzonox were found inside the mandibular nerve sockets, placed while Patel was still alive. He likely couldn't scream, couldn't move. Which leaves only the question, who had access to that gel that night?
A request is sent to pharmacy control. 3 staff members accessed the anesthetic cabinet between midnight and 4 a.m. One was a registered anesthesiologist. One was Patel himself. The third was Vincent Canley. But Canley had no surgical clearance. He was a cleaner. The log notes he used an override badge to retrieve for cleanup restock. Guerrero closes the report. "Override badge?" she says flatly. "Who gave it to him?" Wyatt's phone pings. It's HR. Canley had submitted a transfer request the day after Patel vanished. The request was denied, but he never returned to work. His apartment was vacated, no forwarding address, mail stacked, a single suitcase missing from the lease inventory. And then another ping, a neighbor's doorbell cam from across the hall. April 18th, 2:12 a.m. A blurred figure exits Canley's unit, dragging a duffel bag. He pauses, looks straight into the lens. The frame freezes. Guerrero zooms in. His eyes are open wide.
Like he just heard something. Or someone. "Where'd you go, Vincent?" she murmurs. "And what did you do to the doctor?" The complaint had been Patel's third in 4 weeks. Before the disappearance, Dr. Ishan Patel had built a reputation for 2 things: never missing a shift and never letting anything slide. Staff nicknamed him Chart Hawk for how rigorously he logged controlled substances. If a nurse noted 100 mcg of fentanyl withdrawn, he'd spot a 10 mcg discrepancy before the shift ended. Most thought it made him annoying. Some thought it made him dangerous. The pharmacy control system showed he'd flagged 2 previous anomalies. The last one, 48 hours before his vanishing, concerned a 2 mg vial logged out under the badge of an on-call anesthesiologist, a doctor who, by that night, had already flown to a conference in Reno. The system flagged it as likely error. Patel flagged it as probable theft. His final page to security was terse. Fentanyl 2 mg vial, access conflict, see storage audit, IP. It was sent at 3:42 a.m., April 17. Detectives Guerrero and Wyatt met with Glenn Haverly, hospital director of security. Bald, sharp-suited, and visibly tense, he handed over the full internal message logs. "Anything happened after he paged you?" Guerrero asked. Haverly hesitated. "Our night operator marked it non-urgent. She was overloaded. Never followed up." "And you didn't see his badge activity stop minutes later?" "We weren't watching him. Not like that." Guerrero exchanged a glance with Wyatt. "Pull up the full timeline," she said. The hospital's internal badge logs painted a chilling picture. Patel had entered storage B at 3:38 a.m., logged in with his code. 3 minutes later, his ID was used again, this time in the South Wing OR hall, despite no corridor footage showing him walking there. Guerrero squinted at the screen. "That second ping," she muttered, "he never made it." "Badge was stolen," Wyatt said. The surveillance review continued. 1 minute after the second ping, 3:46 a.m., the gurney rolled past camera C3, pushed by Vincent Canley. Blue sheet, covered form, direction, linen chute. Guerrero's voice was cold. He took Patel's badge, used it, wheeled him out. "Question is," Wyatt said, "was Patel still alive?" In the file room, records clerk Marcy Lopez pulled Canley's personnel folder. His background check was clean: high school diploma, 5 years in hospital sanitation, 2 prior facilities. But his third-year evaluation stood out. Supervisor comments, written in rushed pen, unusual familiarity with surgical layout, request review of janitorial routing, observed entering OR corridors beyond assigned zones. "Why's a floor tech wandering OR suites?" Guerrero asked. Lopez shrugged. "Never got a formal complaint, just a hunch." They returned to the access logs. Canley's master badge was swiped in 3 ORs that night: OR 2, OR 6, and OR 7. Of those, only OR 6 had no scheduled procedures. Its lights stayed off, but temperature logs showed a sudden drop starting 4:02 a.m. and holding steady for 40 minutes.
Refrigeration? Guerrero whispered. More like chilling a space to slow decomposition, Wyatt said grimly. A second audit confirmed it. Canley's badge was used again at 4:48 a.m., this time in the basement chute corridor, a hallway with no cameras and no badge requirement for final access. After that, silence. They tracked the badge's last ping, 5:12 a.m., locker room. Then, nothing. That afternoon, HR received an email from Canley's hospital address. The subject? Resignation, effective immediately. No explanation, no signature. Attached was a blurry scan of a typed note. It read, "I need to step away for family reasons. I'm grateful for the opportunity." IP trace showed it wasn't sent from any hospital terminal. Wyatt scowled. He used Patel's badge. He used his own login. Then he ghosts. Somebody covered for him, Guerrero said. She was right. A scrub tech named Haley Dunn, who'd worked the same shift, confirmed something odd. He clocked out at 6:15, she told them, but I saw him leave at 4. I even asked him, "You off early?" And he said not yet, then walked straight out. Time card fraud, classic sign of assistance. Someone else, possibly Dunn herself, possibly another staffer, had swiped Canley's badge to make it look like he left later. No red flags. The detectives returned to Storage B. It was empty now, clean, smelled faintly of bleach. Guerrero crouched beside the wall unit. 3 days before he vanished, Patel took inventory photos here, she said. He forwarded them to Pharmacy Review. She pulled the images. 6 vials of fentanyl, 2 missing, not logged. Security had marked it as a likely restock error. But the system shows none were checked out, Wyatt noted, meaning someone physically removed them. Guerrero's voice dropped, then tried to erase the trail. But Patel noticed.
He knew, she said. He called it in. Someone panicked. In the maintenance corridor beside OR6, Wyatt knelt near a floor vent. Faint trace of dark powder caught the light. The tech confirmed it. Bone dust. And something else, under the baseboard behind the linoleum, part of a blue nitrile glove. Inside it, a small print, too partial to ID, but enough to confirm one thing. Someone tried to clean, someone rushed, and someone made a mistake. Back in the squad car, Guerrero stared at the report. He didn't just vanish, she said. He walked into a trap and walked out as pieces. The corridor outside OR6 was silent at 3:44 a.m. Dr. Ishan Patel appeared on camera walking steadily, clipboard in hand. He paused briefly in front of the OR door, a moment of hesitation, then keyed in and entered. He never came back out. 3 minutes later, the same camera recorded another figure. Broader frame, no clipboard, slightly hunched. He pushed a gurney, fully covered with a blue surgical sheet. His pace was calm but deliberate. He never looked up. Guerrero watched the footage in slow motion. "Freeze that frame," she said. "There, see how the sheet dips on the right? Something heavy, rigid, likely not linens." Next footage, the laundry chute alcove. 3:47:14, the covered gurney enters. 3:47:22, it exits, empty. 3:47:28, the figure pauses and swipes 2 badges in rapid succession. First Patel's, then his own. "Double access," Wyatt muttered, to make it look routine. Back in the basement, logs showed a linen sorter jammed 3 times that week. One entry listed the load as abnormally dense. No report filed. Janitor on duty? Vincent Canley. When the detectives checked injury logs, there was no incident involving Canley. But the supply room showed a late-night entry, April 18, neosporin plus bandage, signed out under VC. Unreported wound. His sister later recalled he'd had a scratch on his cheek. "Cat got me," he'd said. He didn't have a cat. Back in the OR corridor, the team found faint residue, bone dust, wedged behind a vent panel. And inside a floor crack, part of a blue nitrile glove, stuck there, half torn. Too degraded for prints, but consistent with hospital stock.
One more layer surfaced. A mislabeled audio file, marked as ambient test tone, had survived on the server. They played it. Low static, HVAC hum. Then a wheel squeak. Then a soft, panicked voice. Help. Then metal slam. Then silence. Guerrero froze. Can we isolate the voice? The tech boosted and filtered the audio. It matched Patel's dictation logs, tone, nasal lift, cadence. It was him, alive, conscious, calling out. Seconds before the gurney was pushed toward the chute, Guerrero stared at the waveform. He begged, she whispered. Wyatt's voice was low, and someone heard it. The stethoscope lay in a plastic evidence tray, coiled like a metallic question mark. It had taken the forensics team 2 hours to clean off the residue, blood traces, biological sludge, hairline scratches along the tubing. But what mattered was the curvature. One side had been bent inward, crushed by a single directional force. This isn't wear and tear, the tech confirmed. It was folded, intentionally, something mechanical, not a footstep. The tag engraved Dr. I. Patel was still legible, but dented along its left edge. Near it, a fine score mark. Forensics compared it to tools logged at St. Cedric's. One match stood out. A Hall Series 4 bone saw, high-speed surgical tool used for orthopedic operations. And one of those saws had been signed out 36 hours before Patel disappeared. Its return was never logged. That saw could slice a radius in 5 seconds, Wyatt said grimly. A jaw would take less. The detectives tracked its last recorded use. Surgery room OR3, a tibial fracture repair, routine. But the saw was never returned. The tech that day? Vincent Canley. Which made no sense. Orderlies didn't handle surgical gear. But Canley had access, thanks to a supervisor override badge, a privilege assigned for post-op cleanup. The badge belonged to maintenance chief Marty Allens. When they questioned Allens, he looked confused. I didn't give him that access, he said. That badge stays in the janitor's locker, locked drawer. Unless someone borrowed it, Guerrero finished. A log showed Canley used the override badge at 1:13 a.m. the night Patel vanished. His excuse, recorded in the access log note, resupply soak bin. No nurse recalls prepping the room, but the badge pings don't lie. And at 1:42 a.m., someone removed the Hall bone saw from the sterilization rack. Another ping, another door. A second tray, recovered 2 weeks later from a waste bin behind the hospital loading dock, revealed another detail. 3 gauze pads soaked in lidocaine and benzoxin, the same restricted gel found in Patel's jaw nerve cavities. And beneath them, a surgical clamp with fingerprints too degraded to ID.
Only one print, partial left thumb, was recoverable. It was not Canley's, not Patel's either. It belonged to Haley Dunn, the scrub tech. When confronted, Haley's hands trembled. I don't know, she stammered. I worked OR3. I prepped trays. Maybe he borrowed it? You signed it out, Guerrero cut in. You tagged it canceled case. Haley burst into tears. I thought it was cleanup, she said. He said he needed it for a training demo. He told me to log it under my name so it wouldn't raise flags. I didn't think. He had access anyway. Guerrero was cold. He manipulated you. I didn't know someone would die. Wyatt leaned forward. But you knew something was off. You saw him moving surgical trays with no orders. Why didn't you say anything? Haley shook her head. I thought I'd get fired. He told me I'd be blamed, that I used the drugs too. Did you? Guerrero asked. Silence. Then, once. It unraveled fast. Forensics returned a fresh hit. The stethoscope tubing, when swabbed near the metal stem, carried microscopic particles of bone, jawbone, confirmed by dentin matrix protein 1. Patel's DNA matched. It meant the tool had been on his person, possibly worn, during the trauma. The bone saw, once used, wasn't sterilized. It was stashed, wiped, hidden. They found it in a drainage pipe beneath the east wing, rusted, dried blood in the vent holes. Patel's again. A silent room. Wyatt closed the report. He sedated him.
used the saw, then folded the stethoscope and dumped it with the rest. Guerrero whispered, "That thing probably never left his neck." And someone watched it happen. The jawbone sat in a sterile case, pale and polished like porcelain. Forensic odontologist Dr. May Kravitz studied the cut edges under magnification. "These aren't post-mortem breaks," she said. "Clean, symmetrical, no gnawing, no weather wear. This was precision." The mandibular halves had been separated by a fine-toothed instrument, not a saw from a hardware store, but something surgical. The forensic pathologist confirmed it next: spiral scoring on the interior curve, high-speed blade, likely a Hall bone saw. But it was the residue that made her pause. She lifted a swab from the nerve canal. It shimmered under UV, faint blue-white. "Anesthetic compound," she murmured. Chemical analysis confirmed it: benzonox gel mixed with lidocaine, a restricted compound stored exclusively in hospital OR suites, access limited, tracked. The combination indicated one thing: Patel had been alive when the cuts were made. "Whoever did this numbed him," Kravitz said, "kept him still, possibly even conscious." Guerrero gripped the edge of the lab bench. He couldn't scream. They ran the trace batch ID on the anesthetic compound. It narrowed the field instantly. Only 3 personnel accessed that batch the week of April 17th. 1. Dr. Eliot Brandt, attending anesthesiologist, out of town during the incident. 2. Ishan Patel, accessed 15 hours before his disappearance. 3. Vincent Canley, badge entry, April 17th, 2:08 a.m. Canley had no surgical clearance. His override badge was used, labeled floor bin disposal. Security logs didn't flag it. Next, pharmacy withdrawal logs. The system showed a second access to the restricted locker 14 minutes after Canley's swipe. Badge, H. Dunn. Haley again. When confronted, she sobbed. "I didn't know what he was planning. He told me it was for training." "What training?" Guerrero asked. "He said there was a special cadaver lab for residents, off the books, that I wouldn't be questioned." "Where?" "He never said. Just ask for the jail." Wyatt was blunt. "You handed him drugs, sedatives, and you didn't ask why." Haley's voice cracked. "I was scared." She wasn't the only one. Inventory checks showed 2 small anesthetic kits had gone missing that week, not logged, not replaced. They were later found in a burned-out bin behind the hospital parking ramp, half melted, bearing partial fingerprints. Too warped for print match, but a serial number survived. Cross-reference to the original pharmacy entry, logged by Canley using Patel's ID. "He used the doctor's badge to fake a request," Guerrero muttered, then turned his own drugs against him. One more piece surfaced. Digital forensics traced Canley's access to the OR suite cameras. Logs showed he toggled off feeds to OR 6 at 3:36 a.m. Feed labeled System Test, Auto Disable. "No one noticed for 9 months, Wyatt said. He blacked out the room." But not everything was lost. An old sterilizer unit logged internal temperature fluctuations. It recorded a sharp spike at 4:11 a.m., then flatlined at 4:19, consistent with the disposal of organic matter. That unit sat next to the waste chute. Patel's last movement had been towards the truth, and someone, armed with anesthetics, tools, and fear, made sure he never reached it. The theory was simple. Patel discovered a theft. He paged security. Canley, a desperate orderly with drug access and something to hide, acted fast. He sedated Patel, used surgical tools, disposed of the body. Case closed. Until they searched Canley's apartment. The unit was on the 2nd floor of a dilapidated complex in East Dorning. He'd stopped paying rent 9 months ago. Landlord filed eviction. No one ever came to collect. Inside, the air was stale, thick with mold and old paper. Most surfaces were wiped clean, too clean. But Guerrero noticed the baseboard beneath the desk was freshly patched. Wyatt pried it loose. Behind it, a fireproof folder wrapped in plastic. Inside, printouts, dozens, patient logs, pharmacy transactions, badge reports, all from hospital databases.
But not just Patel's, dozens of others. One sheet was marked in red. Patel, April 17, Level 3 OR, error caught. Beneath it, a handwritten note. He wasn't the first, just the loudest. Guerrero stared at the sentence. "You see this?" she said. "This wasn't about panic. This was planned." And then came the second hit. The badge logs for April 17 had been reanalyzed with a deeper algorithm to detect cloned entries. One sequence stood out. 3:41 a.m., Patel's badge used to enter OR6. 3:42 a.m., same badge pinged from the East Wing pharmacy fridge. Impossible. Unless someone cloned his ID. IT confirmed it. A secondary badge had been programmed using Patel's credentials that night. It was activated at 2:55 a.m. by an admin login from Terminal 4B. That terminal was assigned not to Canley, but to someone higher. Nurse Supervisor Rhonda Keene. The same woman who had signed Canley's access overrides. When they brought her in, she was calm, overly calm. "I logged dozens of badge requests," she said. "It's standard." "You cloned a physician's ID. That's not standard." Keene shrugged. "I was told it was for testing, internal audit." "By whom?" She didn't blink. "I don't remember." Wyatt stepped forward. "You understand obstruction means prison?" She hesitated. Her voice faltered. "I didn't know they were going to kill him." "Who's they?" Silence. Then, "I thought it was a suspension. They said he was going to be reassigned. That's all." "Who said that?" I never got names, just messages." "Where?" "Pager, burners, always untraceable." The detective stepped outside. "It's bigger," Guerrero said. "He didn't just uncover theft. He hit something organized." Wyatt was pale. And someone still covering it. Because when they returned to the precinct, the search warrant had been blocked. Canley's records sealed. Keene released on insufficient cause. Internal Affairs radio silent. And someone had filed a formal complaint against the detectives for harassment. Guerrero stared at her laptop. "What the hell is this?" Wyatt's voice was flat. A wall. Their theory shattered. This wasn't a lone killer. This was a system. The chute corridor behind OR6 was narrow, windowless, and designed to be ignored. It wasn't monitored, wasn't supposed to be. But when Guerrero and Wyatt descended with the facilities chief, they noticed something off. Halfway down the corridor, an auxiliary panel on the chute's metal casing had been removed and reattached, not by maintenance, according to records. A single screw was mismatched, rusted. "Who'd tamper with a waste chute?" Wyatt asked. The answer lay inside. They shut down the sorter system and opened the chute from the side. The panel creaked, metal warped by time and heat. Behind it, a hollow cavity where the shaft widened before the sorter, unseen, unscanned. And wedged into that cavity, resting between layers of compacted debris, was a bundle, wrapped in surgical sheeting. They pulled it out, carefully. Inside, fragments of cloth, hair, and something unmistakable. A rib. Clean, sawed on one side. And at the very bottom, a shoe, men's size 9, blood-stained. The insole read, "Property of Dr. I. Patel." Guerrero's voice dropped. "This was never meant to go through. He jammed it here on purpose." "Why?" Wyatt asked. "Delay," she whispered. "Signal. Someone didn't want it discovered immediately, just eventually." And that's when the second clue surfaced. Beneath the chute door, dust patterns suggested recent disturbance. Not just dust, but scrape marks. Guerrero crouched, flashlight low. The metal beneath had shallow grooves, circular, rubber. "A cart turned here," she said, "pushed hard, not linen, something heavier." They retraced the path, out through the secondary corridor, around the corner, to a service stairwell.
That stairwell was off-limits during night hours, but the log showed one ping. Badge 7184, 3:52 a.m., April 17. Not Patel, not Canley. It belonged to medical assistant Eric Dade. He hadn't appeared in any prior logs.
And when they checked his HR file, they found a note. Left position voluntarily, April 20, relocated out of state. No forwarding address, no phone number. But he'd been on shift the night Patel vanished. Guerrero tapped the badge log. 2 people wheeled that gurney, Canley and Dade. The new theory formed fast. Canley sedated, Dade helped move. Together they staged the disposal, hiding pieces in a part of the chute not scanned by sorters. A delay tactic. But for what? That answer came later, when a second panel was found, 3 floors below, wedged open. Inside, a sealed pouch. Hospital specimen bag. Inside it, a small cassette recorder. Cracked, water damaged. They sent it to audio forensics. Hours passed. The engineer called back. "There's a voice," he said, "mostly static, but at minute 4, listen." They played it. Muffled breathing. Then a weak whisper. "If you're hearing this, it wasn't just him. They're taking people." Then a name. "Dade has the codes." Then silence. Guerrero stared at the waveform. Patel left a message. He knew he wouldn't make it, Wyatt said. The recorder had been jammed in the chute wall, far from the body, protected. A final attempt to warn. But it came 9 months too late. And Dade? He was already gone. The OR hallway's climate logs were rarely checked, a silent digital trail tracking nothing but airflow and temperature. But someone finally looked. At 4:02 a.m. on April 17, room OR6 registered a sudden drop from 72 degrees F to 58 degrees in under 3 minutes. The override wasn't authorized by any surgeon, nurse, or administrator. It was triggered manually. A staff badge accessed the HVAC terminal beside the scrub-in station. Badge, Vincent Canley. There were no procedures scheduled, Wyatt muttered. Why chill an unused OR? For the same reason you ice fish, Guerrero said, to preserve something. They entered OR6 for the first time since the lockdown. Lights buzzed overhead. Every surface gleamed, sterilized countless times. But even bleach couldn't erase all traces. The floor drain near the center table had been replaced. Not repaired, replaced. Guerrero crouched beside it. Smell that? Faint chemical burn, industrial solvent. The facilities manager confirmed the work order, submitted April 19. Drain cracked during cleanup, the note read. Replace entire section. Work approved by Supervisor Rhonda Keene. The same name tied to the badge cloning, but she'd claimed no knowledge of Canley's actions. Wyatt ran a blue light over the floor. Nothing. Then Guerrero flipped on infrared. 2 faint boot prints appeared, long faded, pointing away from the drain. One print had a partial tread. Nike cross trainers, size 11, not Canley. They pulled security footage from the stairwell closest to OR6. A single figure exited at 4:57 a.m., duffel bag in hand, gown over scrubs, hat pulled low. The badge ping, Eric Dade. He had no reason to be there, no OR assignment, no transport request. Yet he left with a sealed bag. And inside that bag, they had a theory. A test was ordered on the new drain. Trace blood residue, human, male, O+, Patel's blood type. But more chilling, fragments of benzodiazepine and rocuronium, paralytics. Guerrero didn't speak for 10 seconds. He was anesthetized, not to kill, to silence. Wyatt stared at the drain, then processed like a specimen. The refrigeration, the drain flush, the chemical whites, it wasn't panic.
It was protocol. And Dade? He hadn't improvised. He followed instructions, which meant somewhere, someone was issuing them, and they'd done this before. The hospital's digital log showed one simple truth. Only 3 staff entered OR 6 the night Patel vanished: Canley, Dade, and someone unexpected. At 3:55 a.m., an override badge was used to access the OR laundry cart. The name logged, Vincent Canley. But handwriting on the cart's paper log didn't match. A nurse supervisor flagged it immediately. "This isn't his writing," she said. "Too neat. Canley printed in block letters. This is cursive." They pulled the log sheet. The signature read V. Canley in elegant penmanship. Forensics compared it to other forms. It was forged. But by whom? That answer came from a detail nearly missed. A badge swipe 5 minutes later at the linen dock. The ID read Canley, but the device used was registered to Terminal 2C, which had been reported missing a week earlier. That terminal had been in use at the time by Eric Dade. He had logged into it the same hour. So why pose as Canley? Because someone wanted to cover tracks and build a false trail that ended with a disposable employee. Dade wasn't just helping, he was redirecting. Guerrero stared at the forgery report. Who taught him how to do this? They dug deeper into his history. Dade had bounced between hospitals for years, short contracts, glowing evaluations, sudden departures, always just after an incident. A missing dose, an unlogged surgical tool, a dead patient with no autopsy.
He was never charged, just vanished. But now, something else surfaced. Security camera footage from 3 weeks before Patel vanished. Patel, walking through the recovery wing, stops at a vending machine. Someone joins him. Eric Dade. They speak, calmly at first. Then Patel steps back, freezes. Dade leans closer, says something low, then walks away. Frame by frame, Guerrero analyzed Patel's face. Recognition, then fear. What did he say to him? Wyatt asked. He warned him, Guerrero said, or threatened him. Another clip, same week, Patel exits the pharmacy wing. A second figure joins him, this time Canley. They exchange words. Patel waves a clipboard. Canley grabs his arm, then lets go. Patel walks away fast. That's escalation, Wyatt muttered. 2 separate confrontations, 2 suspects, and both were in OR 6 that night. But they weren't alone. Fingerprint dusting of the linen cart's underside, an unlikely place to check, revealed a partial palm print. It wasn't Canley, not Dade. It belonged to someone in management. Rhonda Keene. Guerrero stared at the result. She touched the cart, lied about it, which means she was part of the plan, Wyatt finished. But Keene was gone, took leave the week the sewer pump jammed, disconnected her phone, and left behind a hospital email. One message, unread. It was from Dr. Patel. Timestamp, April 16, 9:22 p.m. Subject, anomaly, urgent. Body, Keene, please confirm who else has override access to OR 6. I've seen unauthorized traffic. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize, but if I'm right, this doesn't end quietly. She never replied. It started with a tray. Recovered from the surgical waste bins behind St. Cedric's, it had been logged as biodiscard, standard protocol after procedures. But this tray had never been used in any recorded surgery. When forensics examined it, they found something strange. Microscopic blood traces, 2 distinct profiles. The first was confirmed as Patel's. The second, unknown, male, no match in hospital staff or law enforcement. Guerrero ordered a rapid DNA search through national labs. 2 days later, a match pinged.
The second sample belonged to a man named Marcus Thorne, a travel nurse from Ohio. No record at St. Cedric's. But he had been contracted there 6 years ago. And he vanished. August 2016. Final shift logged. No resignation. No follow-up. His car was found abandoned 20 miles south. Case cold ever since. Now his blood showed up on a tray used the night Patel vanished. Wyatt closed the report. This isn't isolated. Someone's been doing this for years, Guerrero said. Same MO, same tools, same silence. They reopened 2 other missing person cases from hospital staff records. 1 nurse, 1 intern. Both vanished between 2014 and 2020. Both worked night shifts. Both filed internal complaints days before disappearing. No arrests, no bodies. But now they had proof. Someone had been harvesting staff, quietly, systematically. And Patel had come too close. The detectives turned their attention to staff who overlapped all incidents. 1 name appeared in each file. Not Canley, not Dade, not Keene. A former anesthesiologist named Dr. Lowell Mercer. He'd retired in 2021. No disciplinary record, widely respected. But when they pulled his surgical logs, patterns emerged. Mercer had been present during the final shift of every vanished employee, including Patel's first night shift at the hospital in 2017. He trained Keene, supervised Dade's onboarding, and he lived just 20 minutes away. The team got a warrant. Mercer's house was pristine, but the shed behind it told another story. Inside, surgical packaging, unused vials, blood-stained gloves, and a laptop. Encrypted. But the desktop file list showed dates, dozens, all matched to missing persons. One was labeled Patel_final. Guerrero stared at the screen. They documented everything. And the real question wasn't who killed Patel. It was how many they'd taken before him. The deeper they searched, the colder it got. Detectives reviewed the CCTV archive from a week before Patel's final shift. A hallway outside the anesthesia storage. Time, 2:12 a.m. Camera, OR Annex C. 2 men walked side by side, Vincent Canley and Eric Dade. They paused near a keypad, exchanged a few words, and entered the secure drug cabinet room. They weren't scheduled to be there. Neither had clearance. Just before Patel's report, Guerrero said. They weren't stealing. They were restocking. But for what? Wyatt asked. She didn't answer. They traced Dade's last known movement, a hotel 2 towns over, booked under a fake name. He checked out 3 days after Patel's remains were recovered. But he left something behind. A locker in the basement gym, locked with a personal padlock. When hotel staff pried it open, they called police. Inside, surgical gowns, nitrile gloves, disposable scalpel packs, and a plastic storage bag. Labeled Patel, April.
The contents: a blood-stained paper towel, 2 capped syringes, and a folded note. Handwritten. "You shouldn't have asked," it read. "None of them did, but you kept digging." The handwriting matched previous notes recovered from Canley's apartment, but this one was dated 2 days after the disappearance, which meant someone wanted a record. Not to confess, to control. "Why store this here?" Wyatt asked. Guerrero scanned the locker number. "Because it's not Dade's." She pointed to the assigned sheet. Locker number 14, registered to Rhonda Keene. She never checked out of the hospital gym system, which meant even after she left, someone was still using her access. A second camera caught her meeting Dade at a staff lot entrance. Timestamp, April 24, 5 days after the killing. They spoke briefly. She handed him a folder. That same folder was recovered in Mercer's shed. They all knew each other. Guerrero's voice dropped. They weren't covering up a killing. They were maintaining a system. And Patel, calm, meticulous, relentless, had started asking the wrong questions at the worst possible time. Now they were one step from the truth, and someone was still watching. The anesthesia tank was supposed to be empty. It had sat untouched in the corner of the OR storeroom for months, tagged decommissioned, slated for disposal. But something felt off. It was sealed tight, heavier than expected. Guerrero asked the techs to pry it open. Inside, plastic wrap, parafilm layers, and beneath it all, teeth. Human molars, canines, a full upper arch. Forensics laid them out. They matched Dr. Ishan Patel, root curves, enamel wear, and a microfracture he'd had since childhood. The teeth were intact, carefully extracted, preserved. Someone had wanted to save them. A trophy, or a final message. The lab also found fragments of gauze soaked in benzonox. Again, the restricted anesthetic gel. The same chemical trail connecting everything. Patel hadn't been buried, burned, or scattered. He'd been processed, preserved, cataloged. Detectives raided Lowell Mercer's property a second time. Behind a false wall in the basement, they found a filing system. Rows of plastic containers labeled by year. Inside, bits of cloth, vials, and, in some, more teeth. 7 sets in total. All matched to staff who had vanished under Mercer's tenure. Dade had been his runner, Canley his cleaner, Keene his shield. And Mercer? He was the architect. Surveillance showed him visiting the hospital weeks after his retirement, always at night, always entering through the service wing. He used Dade's badge, sometimes Keene's, always staying off camera. Except once. One final clip. April 17, 3:28 a.m. An exterior utility cam showed Mercer slipping through the loading dock entrance. He wore scrubs, rubber gloves in his pocket. His car left 3 hours later. He had been inside the night Patel died. Guerrero stared at the screen. He wasn't a ghost. He was the conductor. Arrests followed. Keene was caught in Florida, Dade in New Mexico. Canley was never found. Mercer tried to flee. A traffic cam in Utah caught his plate. Marshals moved in 2 days later. At trial, he said nothing. No statement, no plea. But in his pocket, police found a photograph. Creased, folded, half erased. Patel, smiling, holding a patient chart. On the back, he looked too long. Dr. Ishan Patel became more than a name on a case file. He became the reason a system finally cracked. He was right. And because he didn't look away, others won't have to again.